Back on the island, Kevin and Dalton Steele had just faced another group of warriors from the Vanguard. With Dalton suffering severe injuries during their last battle, Kevin had to carry him on his back to escape. To help him heal quickly, Kevin gave him a bone healing pill while taking another pill himself. With several casualties already on both sides and constantly being outnumbered by groups of warriors at a time, Kevin contemplated how much more fighting they still had to endure, and whether they would survive until the end to win the battle. Time quickly passed. About 10 minutes later, Kevin suddenly frowned. He then grabbed Dalton's shoulder with one hand and pulled him more than 30 feet. 5 figures slowly walked out of the bushes. Led by Oscar Brady, this was the same unit whom they had encountered earlier.
"We meet again. Are you going to try and run away and hide?"
Oscar Brady crossed his arms in front of his chest and raised his head to look at the two of them. "There's no enmity between us, so why are we forcing each other to fight?" Kevin narrowed his eyes and his entire body tensed up.
"Do you think mere ants like you are qualified to say such things to us?"
A deep voice sounded from behind Kevin and Dalton. A second later, another 2 women and 3 men emerged from the woods. Kevin was stunned when he sensed the intensity of the spiritual energy coming from their leader's body. A middle-stage level 5 expert. Kevin's heart started beating faster. The leader of the new group shot a disdainful glance at Kevin before shifting his gaze to Oscar while a disdainful, mocking smile emerged on his face.
"Oscar, are you really that incompetent? Why did you have to spend so much effort just to find and deal with these 2 ants?" "Troy Evans, what the hell are you doing here? And what did you just say? Don't think you can just insult me because of who your parents are."
Oscar seethed in anger as he clenched his fist tightly.
"How dare you use my family's name to insult me? Do you think you're worthy of calling them out?"
Troy Evans raised his eyebrows and asked. Oscar really hated his guts.
"You...
Oscar!" Marco Rudd hurriedly stopped Oscar, who was about to lash out at Troy, and added, "Now is not the time to engage in a fight with him. The elders of both the Vanguard and the Pinnacle are watching, so we have to prioritize winning the battle." Before Oscar could say anything, Troy tilted his head and glared at Marco.
"You're a member of the Rudd family, right?"
"That's right," Marco admitted without changing his expression. No one knew how much pressure he was facing right now. The Evans family was one of the top 5 most powerful families in the Pinnacle, and Troy was considered one of the top 10 warriors of the younger generation. In the past, he and Oscar Brady had been as close as brothers, and they were even dubbed as the twin stars of their generation. Unfortunately, they had a falling out because of a woman, and now as they both vied to be the one true leader of the Vanguard's junior members, their eyes were filled with contempt whenever they saw each other. Given this, Troy Evans was considered an amazing talent. With the help of his family's resources, he was already able to break through as a level 5 expert at the age of just 20.
"It seems like the Rudd family is becoming more and more useless. They're actually willing to let one of their descendants follow such an incompetent person. Instead of learning how to hunt for meat with a wolf, you're only eating the crap of this dog."
Troy didn't mince words as he insulted both of them at the same time. "You'd better get the hell out of here before you regret it. Stop causing trouble and dragging my family's name into this," Marco sneered back.
"Troy, you've gone too far with your insults. If you have the guts, just come at me."
Oscar's eyes began to turn bloodshot. The atmosphere around them suddenly became even more tense as it seemed that Oscar Brady and Troy Evans were ready to fight each other at any moment.
"What's going on?"
Dalton looked at the 2 groups of Vanguard warriors in confusion. "I don't know either. It seems that they have their own internal issues to deal with," Kevin replied as he helplessly spread his hands. Being caught in the middle of this situation, the two of them were dumbfounded and didn't know what to do as they could neither advance nor retreat. Suddenly, Kevin's eyes lit up. When Dalton saw this, he instantly became nervous. He knew that Kevin was up to something mischievous again. "About that, why don't you guys settle this matter first amongst yourselves? The two of us will just leave to give you some space." Kevin took 2 steps forward and casually remarked. Everyone's eyes suddenly fell upon him when they heard what he said.
"Did I say that you could leave?"
Oscar gritted his teeth. He was so mad that he almost spat out these words. "Is that decision really up to you?" Kevin suddenly glanced at Oscar Brady. He then turned around and nodded at Troy Evans with a smile. "Mr. Evans, right? I can tell that you're a wolf among ordinary men as someone with amazing talent. I'm sure you can easily trample ants like us, so why don't you let us live for a little while longer? You should first take care of that man over there who doesn't seem to know what's good for him. Once you've dealt with him, then you can come after us. I'm sure it won't waste much of your energy when the time comes." Kevin showered Troy Evans with a stream of compliments which stunned Dalton when he heard it. "I don't believe he'll still have the nerve to kill us after praising him so much," Kevin thought to himself. Sure enough, this made Troy Evans feel like he was on cloud 9. All these years he had heard countless flattering words from his family, teachers, and peers. However, it felt especially good to be praised by someone from the Foundation, even if he was just a mere ant like Kevin. Troy Evans' teammates were also stunned by this. Although they were all powerful warriors in their own right, their families weren't as powerful as the Evans family. Thus, they decided to follow Troy and make sure to praise him constantly in order to get in his good graces. That way, as Troy would rise up the ranks, they were hoping that he would bring them along with him as well. However, compared to receiving compliments from Kevin, the difference in Troy Evans' reception was like night and day. Only now did they realize that bootlicking was also a type of skill that could be used to curry favor with one's enemies. At the same time, Marco Rudd and the others didn't expect that Kevin would change faction so quickly. Such a blatant act of betrayal was truly unheard of.
"You're right. Killing you is no different than pinching an ant to death. I'll let you live for a few more hours, and then I shall take your life in the end."
Troy raised his head and declared proudly, "Thank you, Mr. Evans. You're truly a magnanimous and worthy leader of the Vanguard's younger generation. We'll leave now to get out of your way," Kevin responded in a friendly manner. "But to waste your time trying to reason with these disrespectful people, I feel that they're not worth keeping alive."
"I also feel that they're not worth saving. You may leave. Leave these people for me to deal with."
Troy waved his hand at Kevin and Dalton. "All right. See you later." Kevin smiled and was about to leave.
"Stop! I never gave you my permission to leave."
Oscar couldn't hold his temper any longer. Being insulted by Troy Evans had already made him very angry, but he didn't expect that the people of the Foundation would dare to ignore his authority as well. Kevin turned back to Troy and revealed a troubled expression. "Mr. Evans, this—"
"I asked them to leave. Do you have any objections?"
Troy took a step forward and arrived in front of Kevin and Dalton, protecting them behind his back.
"Troy, don't forget what our higher-ups have instructed us to do."
Oscar was infuriated. Why was he taking Kevin's side all of the sudden?
"I don't need you to think about my welfare. You should think about your own safety. Today I shall prove that I'm the one who's worthy of Heather."
Troy suddenly drew out a long sword with his right hand, and as he channeled his spiritual energy into his weapon, its blade emitted a blue light. As Troy Evans waved his sword around, a powerful pressure surrounded them as he prepared to attack Oscar Brady and his unit. Sensing the animosity between Oscar Brady and Troy Evans, Kevin suggested that he and Dalton Steele should leave to give them some space to settle their dispute. When Oscar refused, Kevin started praising Troy with flattering compliments to curry favor with him. Overjoyed by Kevin's compliments, Troy agreed to spare their lives for the time being and allowed them to leave. Insulted by this, Oscar stopped Kevin and Dalton once again. As Troy stepped in front of them to confront him, Oscar reminded him not to disregard their higher-ups' instructions. However, Troy advised him to worry about his own safety and vowed to prove himself worthy of Heather Wallace. He then brought out a sword and was prepared to fight Oscar and his unit. Such a scene surprised everyone, especially Oscar Brady and his unit. After all, he and Troy Evans were the ones who belonged to the same faction. Moreover, before setting foot on the island, the generals of the Vanguard had personally given them an order. With the Foundation's most elite junior members gathered there, the Vanguard's own representatives had been instructed to kill every single one of them at any cost. Acting on behalf of the Pinnacle, the Vanguard's invasion of Chicago wasn't as easy as they had imagined. Despite their numbers, the defensive line formed by the numerous schools of the Foundation had proven to be a huge hindrance that prevented their forces from reaching the lakeshore. This was the reason why the higher-ups had thought of holding this battle to determine the outcome of the war. That way, even if the strategy ended in failure, the younger generation of the Foundation would still suffer severe losses. And by effectively hampering the Foundation's growth in the next few decades, all the Pinnacle needed to do was wait until the older generation died off before striking once again. By then, their invasion would no longer face any hindrances, allowing them to successfully return after so many years in exile. Given this objective, Oscar Brady didn't expect Troy Evans to be so conceited and short-sighted that he would prioritize his own interests at a time like this. It only took some flattering words from Kevin for him to completely forget about the mission that they had been given and want to have a fight to the death with him here instead. Seeing this as a blatant act of insubordination and betrayal, Oscar was left with no choice but to fight back. With storm clouds approaching above them, Oscar took a deep breath as his demeanor gradually turned somber.
All right, if that's what you want, then let's have a quick showdown today to prove which one of us is truly worthy of Heather.
Oscar accepted Troy's challenge as he kept the purple lightning spear and drew another spear from his back.
Isn't that the electric wolf spear? No one has used it in combat for many years.
Marco Rudd couldn't help but exclaim. The electric wolf spear was considered a legendary weapon, and it had been passed down from generation to generation in Oscar Brady's family. Kevin frowned slightly and stared at the long spear in Oscar's hand. He clearly remembered that there were detailed records of it that he had found in the secret books in his possession. According to legend, in the event of a storm, the electric wolf spear could act as a metal conductor that could control the direction of lightning, allowing each strike to instantly kill one's opponents. At first, Kevin thought that this weapon had long been lost and only remained in stories from the past. He didn't expect that someone would actually take it out right in front of him today.
Are you already going to use your almighty spear so soon? Other than relying on family heirlooms, what other abilities do you have?
Troy slowly raised the sword in his hand and used his other hand to take out some powder from his pocket.
Retreat quickly. That's Troy Evans' signature concoction, Heart's Desire powder.
Marco loudly called out, urging the rest of his unit to get out of there. When they saw this, even the 4 experts who came with Troy also quickly dispersed. However, Kevin and Dalton were caught off guard and unable to react in time. As they were the closest to Troy, they were immediately put into a trance as he blew the Heart's Desire powder all around him. Because of this, Kevin felt like his mind was starting to go blank. Instead of focusing on surviving and winning the battle for the Foundation, those thoughts were completely swept away by his love for Lily like a surging tide. As such, he instantly wanted to give up everything and return to the hospital to be with her. Still not knowing whether Lily would ever wake up, feelings of regret and guilt had also seeped into Kevin's heart. Suddenly, Kevin's spiritual energy surrounded him, making his whole body twitch a few times. It was as if he was subconsciously trying to fight back against the effects of the trance that he had been put in. He then regained his senses enough to realize that he had been affected by the Heart's Desire powder. With that, he forcefully bit the tip of his tongue, using the piercing pain to wake himself up. "Dalton, how are you?" Kevin quickly turned around and asked with concern. Unfortunately, Dalton didn't have his strength. Still affected by Troy's powder, he just stood there with a silly smile on his face and was even drooling a little bit. Dalton then called out,
"Miranda, why are you calling? I'm with Kevin right now. Don't worry, after we both finish our work, I'll take you to a ranch in the southwest to herd cows and ride horses."
Kevin's brows furrowed when he heard this. Why didn't he know that Dalton had such thoughts? But now that they were in the midst of a precarious situation, Kevin had to find a way to wake him up as soon as possible. Given this, he forcefully slapped Dalton's shoulder and transferred some of his spiritual energy to him. At this time, Troy also noticed what Kevin was doing. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes and a smile appeared on his face.
"What an interesting guy,"
Troy thought to himself. Since the Heart's Desire powder was his special concoction, he knew better than anyone how powerful it was. It could tap into someone's heart and mind to reveal whatever that person truly cared about the most. Up until now, he had never met anyone who had no deep desires. And aside from using this information to threaten his opponents, it was also a good way to distract them from a quick defeat. However, the fact that Kevin was able to escape from his trance impressed Troy. For his concoction to have failed, Kevin must have had a strong enough power base to overcome its effects, which was a rare feat for someone from the younger generation. Meanwhile, Oscar Brady narrowed his eyes. After being able to retreat and avoid the powder's effects a moment ago, he swiftly shot out like a cannonball as he rushed back toward Troy. Since Troy's current power base was very high, if Oscar wanted to defeat him, he couldn't afford to be careless. He knew that he had to be completely focused and seize every opportunity. Normally, whoever struck first usually gained an advantage over their opponent by striking some amount of fear in them. However, Troy was no ordinary person. After sensing that Oscar was about to attack, he didn't retreat to widen the distance between them. Instead, he instantly lunged forward to meet him. With a blue light bursting out from the sword in his hand, it clearly seemed as though Troy was looking forward to fighting his rival. At the same time, it had begun to rain heavily, and Oscar's electric wolf spear was wrapped up with dense lightning that was conducted from the sky. As he waved this weapon in his hand, he let out a loud and fierce roar as he approached Troy. With the showdown between the two of them on the verge of breaking out, everyone who was watching from both sides was dazzled by this spectacle, as legendary weapons and elite maneuvers were unleashed. As for Dalton, he still remained in a trance despite Kevin's best efforts to help him regain his senses. "What the hell? Why aren't you awake yet?" Kevin retracted his arm from Dalton's shoulder and took a step back. Suddenly, he thought of another idea. A second later, a powerful slap landed on Dalton's face. After stumbling back 7 or 8 steps, he finally woke up.
"Kevin, what just happened?"
Dalton couldn't stay calm anymore after feeling a burning pain in his cheek.
"Was it Oscar who hit me?"
He wasn't used to this feeling. In the past, he had always been the one who slapped others, and up until just now, he had never been slapped by anyone before. "I don't have time to explain things to you right now. We have to take this opportunity to escape." Kevin looked at the fierce battle unfolding in front of them and immediately began to search for a way out for them. Although he looked as steady as a mountain on the surface, he was actually panicking like a child deep inside. At the moment, the two of them were surrounded by too many level 5 warriors, so he didn't dare to start a fight against them. Without having any idea how many of the Foundation's representatives were still alive, he couldn't count on anyone to come to their aid. Since the Vanguard's junior members were too powerful, the only way to escape was to gather all of them together somehow. Only then would they have a chance of survival. Just as Kevin was about to take a step forward, he and Dalton were stopped by Marco, Rudd, and the others, who were only a couple of feet away from them. "Oscar said that you guys can't leave, so I can't let you go." Marco looked at the two of them coldly and called out. Is that so? Kevin chuckled. He then turned around and shouted at Troy Evans' men. Mr. Evans told us that we could leave, but these guys won't let us. Kevin added, I'm telling you this not because I want to live, but because they dared to disrespect and disobey Mr. Evans. What are you going to do about it? Kevin was smart enough to realize that these two groups of warriors obviously hated one another, and if he was able to provoke them to fight against each other, then he and Dalton would be able to leave safely. As for his brown-nosing, it was no big deal to him. Anyway, wasn't there a good saying? If you want to live, you must be willing to do whatever it takes to survive. As expected, when Troy's men heard this, they quickly rushed over and blocked the path of Marco and the others. Mr. Evans already allowed them to leave. Are you sure that you want to go against his wishes? One of the men said coldly. Dustin Newman, stop pretending to act dumb and looking for an excuse to fight us. Don't think that just because you're following Troy, you can come out and do whatever you want. Marco's temper immediately rose. Be careful. If you offend me, I'll have no choice but to make you regret it. That'll depend on whether you have the ability or not. Dustin glanced at Kevin and Dalton and pointed toward a clear path of escape. You two get out of here right now. I want to see who dares to stop you.